Data storytelling is literally the concept of building a story. So a story has a compelling narrative. It's based on complex data and analytics, at least the data part of it, the storytelling. It tells your story, and hopefully what you want to do with your story is influence, inspire, and inform a particular audience. And the way that you do this is by providing insights into the evidence that you've collected, so the data and analytics that you've collected, and you share this through graphs, charts, and visuals. So when you do this, what you do is you gather your information. You're getting all of this statistics, and you probably have it. Doesn't matter how you collect it, on a database, on an Excel spreadsheet, but it's probably very complicated information. And what you're going to do is you're going to try to simplify it. You're going to make it easy for your audience to engage with that information. And hopefully by making it easier, it helps them make critical decisions quicker and more confidently. They're not having to dig for the information. So a successful data story includes a data visualization, and the narrative of the actual story. So in this diagram here, you can see how the narrative, data, and visuals all come together to enlighten, engage, and explain. And in the end, obviously, what we're hoping for is to create some sort of change. So data, what is data? The first of the three is data, and data is the most simple, in simple terms, raw information. So information collected and gathered to confirm a hypothesis. And when collecting data, we usually do so to prove a point. Or we want to create a change that you would like to see, and that comes from the data you have collected and are now ready to present. Here you have an example of a real-life data that was used by my very own volunteer resources department. On the right, you will see that we use Better Impact to collect information from our volunteers using something called feedback. So the feedback feature is something, it's on the back end of Better Impact. And what it does is you can ask questions at the end of your volunteer shift. So because I work in a hospital, one of my questions may be, how many patients did you visit today? And they would put in that number for me. And so that data would collect over time. You certainly don't need a fancy website or software like Better Impact to gather this information, though. Good old pen and paper, transferring that information to Excel spreadsheets works just as good. You can filter through Excel just as well. The point is that you're collecting the data you want and are having it entered somewhere. So with Better Impact and the feedback questions, it gets them to, we always try to get them to answer 2 or 3 questions at the end of their shift. And so that it helps us to collect relevant to those areas. So as you can see there, we focus on a few areas like family members and visitors assisted, hand hygiene audits, navigators, etc. And that's the stuff that we're going to want to report on, because that's the stuff that we feel are the most important for our senior leaders to understand. We have a hand in, and we have a big hand in it. These are the amount of people we are helping. This is the percentage of patients we are helping. So for this graph here, that you see, the information was collected from January to December 2018. So those are the grand totals based on what the information that our volunteers entered in those fields. So on the right-hand side, you see an Excel spreadsheet where they have created some pie charts. So you collect the same kind of information either way. So however you're going to do it, as long as you're collecting. So now that you have the data, you've put in the work and the time to collect it, what do you do with it? You're going to turn it into something called a data visualization. So here you're going to see 2 examples. On the left, you have data in a chart form. Simple, easy to read, does the job well enough. But do those numbers and lines tell you a story? Not really. You probably still have to go a little bit deeper if you're trying to convince someone of something, or you're trying to say what it is that those numbers mean. On the right side, you see that the data collected shared with a narrative. So it's a simple story that adds the numbers, which is your data collected, and tells the impact this organization is making on their community. It highlights all of the information they want the reader to know and serves as a means to process that information in a clear and quick way. So it's a lot easier and friendlier to read than if you were to have to just show somebody a graph. Let's move on to the second part, which is data visualization. So what is that? The modern way of delivering through infographics or annual impact reports. I'm sure your organization has completed some of these. Using data you have collected and showcasing it in an easy to view format that allows the audiences to understand all the information you want to share without having them to read through a long article or have to review charts like the one we saw on the previous slide. Here's a really great example from the Catholic Charities. They collected their data and they put their biggest numbers that they want the audience to know. This was a clip from their annual report. You can do these data visualizations through a bunch of different resources. But these ones here I'm going to list actually are for free, and then they do have paid versions. So data visualizations are the representation of information in the form of the charts. So how do you create these charts or diagrams or pictures? These are some of the free resources that I use at work. I use Pictochart in Canva. I'm sure many of you have used Canva in the past. It's very user-friendly. It has plenty of templates that are for free, so you don't have to start from scratch. You can manipulate them, change them, use your organization's colors or branding. They offer free stock photos. So you don't have to worry too much about going out and snapping a photo of an event or a volunteer. You even know you can search on Google for photos, but there's always that risk of copyright issues, obviously, and it could take very long to look for royalty-free images, and sometimes you get through it all and you realize at the very end you still have to pay for it. So these kind of websites already did that work for you. So you may consider trying a few of these out, seeing which one you like best. And you can even purchase a license if you want the pro versions. If you work for a large organization, someone in the organization may already own it, so you may be able to piggyback on a license, such as the public affairs department or anyone else that does some sort of social media management. So here you can see that there are a few more examples: Visme, Crello, Hootsuite. Hootsuite is more for your social media, but it does give you those graphs that you can kind of cut out and use if you would like to. And then once you've decided on the website you're going to use, you're going to have to go back and decide on what information that you've collected that you want to share. So try to make it as visually stimulating for your audience as possible. These websites offer really great templates. The one on the left-hand side is for our Princess Margaret Cancer Center Wig and Accessory Boutique. That's a mouthful of a name. But it's just a template that we took. We added some of our own photos at the top, and we manipulated the information, the font, and really selected what it is that we want to showcase to our leaders that we have done at the Accessories Boutique for that year. So you're going to want to, my best advice for you is probably to put yourself in the shoes of the audience and think, how would I like to see the information shared? How would it have the most impact on me as an outsider? And think of other ways you've seen information shared in other infographics or annual reports that you've liked. Then you can play around with the layouts, the templates, the color schemes. Like in the one there on the left, we incorporated some real photos and icons. Think about your typography and how you want the content to appear on the page. So on the right-hand side, it's a very simple infographic, but we used large numbers and a lot of white space to make those numbers pop out. And we didn't put a lot of explanations on the page, but except for that one with the arrow pointing up that says, volunteers help us, assisted X amount of patients, right? So you want to make it so that certain things jump out on the page. Pick which ones you want to jump out the most and highlight those. You can certainly get creative and don't be afraid to share the data that you have in interesting ways. If you have more than one key number you want to share, you can use a graph or a chart or showcase all the information. On the left-hand side there, you see our pet therapy dog, and we used kind of a fun layout of somebody looking at their tablet to tell the story, the tweet that went out, and then we included it with the graph and information, on how many people visited our social media pages. So get a little bit creative with it. You can include written content to go along with it. With data visualizations, you want the graphic itself to tell the story more so than actual words. So you want to limit the actual writing on the page. Not always possible when you're trying to tell a story, but it really is great and easy to use when you have numbers and percentages, because then you can just literally write maybe one sentence underneath, like you're seeing there, the feedback from volunteers on the right-hand side. So remember to keep in mind that your audience, who they are, and what the best way to communicate with them would be, like what it is about your data would be interesting to them. Here you see an infographic on the left that tells the story of how our Toronto Western Hospital did in the month of March 2018. So we do our infographics by hospital by month because we want to share with that particular group of volunteers. It doesn't make a ton of impact if I'm sharing the Toronto general phone numbers with the Toronto Western people, right? So there's a lot of data that's being shared in that infographic, but it's visually stimulating, it's easy to digest, and it's pleasing to the eyes. This might be a sufficient way to share your information, or you may want to engage your volunteers or your audience members to give you feedback once you've shared a particular style. So like this here, we asked our volunteers, do you like the way it looks? Are we sharing information that is interesting to you? What else do you want to know about? And then you can definitely get that feedback and make it better the next time. So when you think about things on a larger scale, like telling the stories to your leadership team instead of your volunteers, for example, or to your clients, you may want to think about something like an annual report instead, where you can share a lot of data in one spot. That's probably more ideal than just a simple infographic. So here's a great example from Plan International. This was from their annual report. It was a 2-page spread. They captured their client base through the graphics. So you can see that they used diverse characters. They use bright colors to convey their messaging, and they use large numbers to bring attention to what they wanted you to see first. So first and foremost, you see that 50.3 million children, and then it kind of breaks it down for you a little bit further. You could easily say something like, my organization helped 150 departments and clinics, but that won't make much of an impact on a page. So we took the lead from Plan, and we created our own infographic for our annual report on a 2-page spread that showcased the 150 departments. So this has a lot more impact, and when someone is looking at it, than if I just simply said that sentence. Our department, helps 150 departments across the hospital. So definitely different layout sends a stronger message. So that was a lot about visualization. Let's talk a little bit about narrative and how you're going to do that. So things to consider about when it comes to narrative, there are 5 things that I usually think about and I ask my team to think about. Who is your target audience? And we are going to go break these down a little bit further. So, who are you reaching out to? Is it your leaders? Is it your customers or clients? Or is it your volunteers? Because dependent on who your audience is, you may present the information differently. Number 2, what story can you tell with the data? So what is important? What insights are you willing to share or wanting to share? Number 3, what data matters and what would be the most effective way to create a data visualization for it? So if you know the data you want to share, is it going to look best shared in a story, a full page story, a 2-page story, a graph, however it is that you think would make it more stimulating for your audience? What is the insights of your data? So what is it that makes your data worth sharing? And if you could really make it so that it's like 1 sentence max or a few words max. Try to think on that a bit. And what context can you provide? So how is your data valuable to the business or organization? Let's talk about audience and who your audience is. So decide on the route that you're going to want to go with your report or infographic. So ask yourself, who are you talking to? What do you want them to know? And is the story relevant to the organization's missions or goals? Does it provide them with any insights that they may need or that you want to share, that you want to point out? There are three main audience types that you can present to. So your leaders, so leaders in your organization, your customers, which could be your clients, whoever is receiving the service or sponsoring the providing the funding, and then the volunteers who are actually doing the work. So determining this will help you to decide the complexity of the information you want to present. If you want to showcase a program or work to your donors or sponsors, you may want to include financials so that they see that where their money is being spent and what great initiatives they are helping to fund. If you're wanting the audience to be senior leaders, for example, you may consider staying away from relating volunteer impact dollars because that's what we really don't like to do that, and really showcasing the dedication and work your volunteers are doing and how it's impacting the organization through the organization's broader mission, values, or goals. If your volunteers are your chosen audience, so like the infographic you saw for Toronto Western, our volunteers were our audience. You want to showcase stories of real volunteers and the difference that they're making for the cause that they are in. So in your organization, you want to showcase their stories so that your volunteers can see the impact they're actually having. And so these three examples are three ways that you can base your stories on for your audience. If you look at the picture there on the left for leaders, this redistribution center was really trying to explain to the leaders where they're redistributing, what are the numbers they're doing very generally, and they included photos of the volunteers doing the actual work. And it tells a little bit of a story at the bottom. Again, very little wording, but enough to explain what those numbers mean. In the middle photo, it's actually somebody who's receiving a service. So it's a customer or a client of this particular program. And her name is Christina, and she's telling her story about how the services that the organization provide changed her life. So that's a different type of story. And then the run on the right-hand side is a volunteer story where Dr. Magda volunteers for a cancer organization, and it's explaining the story of why she decided she was going to volunteer for that particular organization and how she's giving back to the organization. So for constructing your data story, what story can you tell with the data and what important insights can you share? So determining your data and what it's telling you and what the link is between your data and an interesting insight is going to help you decide what it is that you want to showcase. This can help you create a more meaningful narrative. It also provides you with a starting point to build your story and perhaps even the potential to tell your story to various audiences. You're going to want to ask yourself, what are the goals you're trying to tell in your story? What are you trying to explain? And a really great acronym that I shared when I did this session at our annual conference was the acronym BUS. So big, useful, and surprising. So write that down because that's you're gonna want to throw on your page. You're gonna want something that's a big number or a big title. It's gonna be useful to the story you're trying to tell, and it's gonna be surprising to the audience who's gonna be reading it. And the way that you can show a good data story is through good visuals. So visuals are very powerful. They're a great way to engage your audience and to keep their attention. And visualizing your audience data story enhances your audience's comprehension of what's happening. So these two examples are telling two very different stories, but both in a very impactful way. And they're reaching their audience through both a visual and the data. So the one there on the left, big number, big, you're going to want to see what that 14 million is. So they threw a number at you. They have this picture. What are they trying to tell you? They tell you a little story there on the bottom, right? Whereas I can't speak. The one on the right is giving you information, but it's big picture information of what they see themselves from now to 2025. And it's shared differently. It's not like one graphic, one number, but it's showing you that it's going to be like, this is our mission. This is what we're going to do. And it's using little infographics to get there for you. So one thing with data is sometimes we collect too much of it and we don't know what to do with it. it's hard to determine what is the most important stuff that you want to share. But by determining what data is most relevant to showcase your narrative, it doesn't have to be challenging to do that. You're going to want to start by identifying your data that can inform on the topics that you are wanting to showcase. So instead of looking at everything that is available to you data-wise, first pinpoint what it is that you want to share. What is it that what stories are you trying to tell? If you are looking to tell the story about important climate change initiatives, you're going to look at the photo here, the graphics that I'm using from American University of Washington. So what they did here is they took their story to show the how-tos of the program, why it is an important initiative to tackle, and they speak about the success of the program as well. So sustainability is one of the university's main goals, and they even started a sustainability plan back in 2014 that showcased how the university achieved running 50% of its campus on solar energy with the long-term goal of making it 100% renewable energy. They featured the story through one photo, which is their mascot there, he's leading by example, and an article that went along with it. But you can showcase your story featuring statistics as well. As you can see here on the right-hand side, the Center for Biological Diversity does this. So they included their big picture. That's going to be their biggest visualization that they want you to see is their giraffes. Then you're going to see a small piece that has a few big numbers next to an article. So these are great examples of, if you're doing an annual report of some sort, choosing a big photo, a big graphic, that is meaningful, that's going to make people want to read the story attached to it. So there are so many ways that you can effectively communicate data visualization, but the basic idea is to pick the data that best represents the data you are sharing. So if you're showing your financials, for example, you may want to show some sort of a chart like this example here on the left-hand side. Charts offer the reader a series of information, but another way is a simple infographic with a few photos. So on the right-hand side, you're going to see your favorite presenter, me, showcased in the Princess Margaret report. And this one is a little bit easier to read, a little bit more simple. It has a few photos of the events that the foundation ran throughout the year to raise awareness, to raise funds, to highlight the participants, but it also shares the data and its money data in a different type of visualization. So visualizations do help guide your audience and really connect your reader to the story you're telling. So if they're reading your annual report or if they're reading your impact report, you better bet that they have something invested in your organization already. It could be emotional, it could be financial, but whatever it is, pictures help to show real life examples of the work in action. So that, and pictures at the end of the day do show something that, numbers could never do, right? So let's move on to the next one. All right, so number 4, what are the insights in your data and what is important for you to share? After analyzing your data, you can determine the most relevant information that will help create meaning out of your data. Perhaps it can showcase the spikes and dips of a certain initiative or showcase the overall progress your organization is showing. Very good example are these 2 examples here. By analyzing and digging into the patterns, it helped to determine themes and data stories and helped them decide what is important to showcase and what is worth showcasing. So you can see it's 2 very different ways of showcasing, and it's going to be your personal preference at the end of the day, what it is that you want to present and how you want to present it. I'm somebody who enjoys photos more. I'm going to lean more towards the example on the left, for example, but a lot of people just want something clean and clear and may, go to the right-hand example, but really determining what it is that you want to share is what's the most important thing to consider. Oh, sorry, I went back. That's fine. And context. So what context can you provide when you're thinking about your data? And how is it valuable to your organization or your business, right? Context is explaining the situation and why you are telling the story. So it should have a hook that engages the audience. It should also explain who the key players are and what the conflict and solution that you are trying to provide. So providing context in your data visualization helps your audience understand what they otherwise might not be familiar with. In these two examples, these organizations choose impact and how their impact is affecting the world and their communities. So along with other visuals, they share a more insightful story. Next to it, they craft the right narrative and make it easy for the audience to understand what they're trying to tell them. So again, two very simple examples and very different ways of sharing. So the example on the left-hand side is a collective impact. They want to show they have a world map and they're showing everywhere that their work touches. On the right-hand side, they're still showing everywhere their work touches, just in a very different way. They've decided that the information, the data that they want to share is more on, particular an unduplicated individual served in that particular community. So same data, two very different ways of sharing it. So that's a very quick round. I know I spoke very quickly. I'm so glad there's a recording that will be shared with you. But I wanted to show you a quick case study so that it's something that I did here at work so that it kind of helps you understand something that you can do with yours and how you can bring one of your stories to life. So we had a project initiative that started with it was an older volunteer who created heart-shaped pillows for our cardiac patients in the Peter Monk Cardiac Center. So UHN does over 6 cardiac surgeries per day. And this volunteer would make these pillows from home and bring them in and provide them to the patients on the units. And what these pillows do is the patient will actually hold the pillow up against their incision, and the incisions are rather large. You hold it down, and what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to help the patient when they're coughing, for example. Adding the little bit of pressure helps the patient cough because they have to cough up a lot of unfortunate stuff right out of surgery. It aids in their recovery, making it more comfortable during their hospital stay, and also can be used in the car or at home on the car ride with a seatbelt for comfort, etc. Right? So what happened was this particular volunteer was retiring from the program, and we weren't going to have anyone else to continue this work. Let's face it, a lot of our volunteers nowadays are especially in my particular hospital, there are a lot of students looking for experience in their particular field. So not many of them were going to want to sit there and sew pillows for us. So we had to come up with some sort of initiative or program, and we just called it the Patient Pillow Program. And we really had to start from scratch because we didn't have anything. So we created a template. We found some, we did a bake sale, believe it or not. This was pre-COVID to collect some funds so that we could purchase supplies so that we knew we were going to need, thread, needles, fabrics, stuffing, etc. And then we thought, what volunteers could come in and do this kind of work that would be meaningful to them and would help our organization. So it didn't really help for us to have one volunteer sit in our lounge making these pillows. We thought we would create a corporate volunteer engagement program because we hadn't had one of those at our hospital. And so we started, when we put all of this information together, we started canvassing organizations that we knew had some sort of day of service or engagement program, and we invited them to come into the hospital and make these employees help make these pillows for our patients. We created an interest form. We put it on our website. We created an agreement form for the organization to sign. It did include a call to action. We asked for a small donation. We didn't ask for a particular amount, but it certainly helped keep the funding for purchasing the supplies coming. And we marketed the program on our social media through posts and Instagram stories. So when we created the online contact form, we asked them questions like, what's the name of your organizations? How many employees will be attending? And then we we had to set up some rules, obviously, because we are a hospital. They weren't going to be, they were going to be basically in a boardroom doing this initiative. We were going to be running it, but they weren't going to be in contact with patients, all that sort of things. Like we had a whole agreement set out. And then we created an Excel spreadsheet to collect data. And there was two types of data that we were collecting. Number one was funding data, so how much donations were we getting coming in from the program. Another piece, another tab on our Excel spreadsheet was like how much are we spending on supplies. And then another tab collected the name and organization of the corporate volunteers, how many employees attended, and how many pillows they actually made. A little quick note on the photo that you see there, the graphic you see there, that was just our instructions for creating the pillows. We would invite them in, we'd book a boardroom, we'd have those hanging around the tables. We would do a live demo of actually making a pillow, and then we would set them to work, and we would do this in 3-hour spans, so 3 hours in the morning and 3 hours in the afternoon. And from this wonderful program, we got lots and lots of wonderful photos, plenty of action shots. We got pictures of groups with their pillows. We got quotes from the participants. And we got, we asked why did they want to volunteer with the hospital. We got some really great stories about giving back. And so we collected this data over the year. A lot of it. We got a lot of photos, a lot of interest, a lot of volunteers. As you can see, we had schools come in, we had organizations come in. It was wonderful. So many wonderful people, lots of big smiles, lots of awesome pillows. At the very end, the final result for our annual report was this graphic here. So after all those workshops and all that data collecting and story gathering, we created the graphic to add to our annual report. And this visual tells the audience everything that we want them to know. How many organizations came through, how many volunteers we had, how many hours the workshops ran, and how many pillows they made. So that's also 451 patients who received these pillows. So even though we saved 451 pillows, what we could have even written there was 451 patients who received these pillows to aid in their recovery. So this information helped us to shine a light on the program, which is fairly new. It got some clout from our leadership teams, who then worked with us and the foundation here at the hospital to create funding to keep the program running. So we no longer had to depend just on the donations from the organizations or run a lot of more bake sales. We were able to purchase fabric, stuffing. We even purchased a sewing machine, and we grew the program for about 2 years until the pandemic hit. Ultimately, this was the perfect definition of a data story. It had data collection, data visualizations, and a narrative that helped to serve a purpose. In this case, it was to tell the story of the importance of the program on our recovering patients. It helped our patient experience, and in turn, it became a call to action. So if you want to, if our organization wanted us to keep this program running, we need your help. So this narrative influenced the decision of our organization decision makers to get behind us and to support our team and their initiatives. So now it's your story. What time is it? I ran through a little bit quick, but I'm hoping that we are able to have a bit of a discussion around how the questions that were sent out to you yesterday and how we can get you started. We'll definitely take some questions. I don't know if you want to unmute yourself or you want to pop them into the chat, but let's brainstorm a little bit. It's your turn to come up with a bit of a data story. I hope that you were able to do a little bit of digging or some thinking last night with the questions. And I'm going to put you guys into breakout rooms for about 5 minutes. So we're actually going to leave the main session, and I want you guys to work on, between the three of you on a particular story. So if one of you happens to have a story, or all three of you, decide which one it is that you would like to work on. And I want you to think about what could be something from those points that you share. What is bus, right? So what is big, surprising, and useful? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a minute here. And I'm going to assign you guys into breakout rooms. So I'm going to let's do three three breakout rooms. So it should be three or four of you in there. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes, and I want you guys to do it as I said, kind of just come back. And at the very end, we're going to try and share some of those ideas and brainstorm together how you can make them even bigger and better. So I'm going to open up the breakout rooms and feel free to join them, and I'll time them for 5 minutes.
Hey, Sherry. My Siri phone answered me. If I get Siri to ignore me and Sherry to hear me. No sound. I guess you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. I can't hear you. No luck, eh? Oh dear. So can you see the chat? Yeah. So I just included a couple of points there in response to the first question, and I missed the second and third question. But I've got this interesting group that doesn't really speak in terms of volunteers, and yet their organization is made up considerably of volunteers, and I'm the executive director. I hear them talk about members all the time, but if I could get them to change the vocabulary, maybe change the rhetoric into volunteers, they would have a much different and probably better understanding of what they should be doing as an organization. And this particular discussion on data and graphics in the presentation would probably be really, really helpful. Instead of the data crunching that I do with tables of membership numbers across the entire organization. We have 6 regions, and we have chapters in every region. Ontario is the biggest one with 22 branches, and Quebec is the smallest with only 4. That's where I'm at with this. So I think it's an important tool. I wonder if you have to be creative, though, and imaginative. I'm not very artistic when it comes to that kind of stuff. Okay, I'll leave the room and we'll try and rejoin. Okay.
So we hadn't, anyway.
Yeah.
We weren't at a place to do a survey in 2021, but we have, you know, we're in a more steady place now with volunteers.
Yeah.
I'd like to do one, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Last time I know that the volunteers weren't included as well, but I don't know of any used yet. That's another one coming up.
And if they're not included, that's fine here, because I don't think then we would just adapt some questions and do our own with SurveyMonkey. But
yeah. Okay, I'm gonna close the room. It'll give them. Oh no, that's complete.
Thank you for that.
Let me close the breakout rooms. I'll give them 60 seconds to come back. And then we can oh, it's so nice to see faces. I could see faces when my presentation was on, so I'm like, okay. So there's a few of us left, and I'm curious to hear from you guys. If you found it difficult, if you found it hard, if it was something that you think you can easily do, if you already do it. Some people may already do it for their organization, and you may have tips for us on something maybe I didn't share. So is there anyone from any of the groups who wants to share a little bit of insights or what you guys picked? No?
I can share on behalf of our group.
Veronica. Thanks, Mark.
Number one, I'm going to admit I didn't know that there was some prep needed ahead for this today. But we were just actually just getting into the discussion when we were brought back to the group here. But we were helping Carol. We had Lucy and Agoville in our group. Carol's actually very, very new to this. They just got their group together back in August, and so she's looking for ways to be able to present their cause to the community.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And what is it that you do, Carol? What's your organization?
My organization is the Tenant Association of Cornwall and area.
Okay. And what is it? What is do you serve clients, customers? What is it that you guys do?
Well, it's for anybody who's a tenant who's renting either house or apartment, and if they run into any issues with landlords or something with the unit or something's going on.
Important work, and probably one that not a lot of people know about, because I had never heard of it. So it's very cool.
It's very new, and there's been a few in the major cities, but Cornwall is a small town, so it's new to us.
Okay. And where would you want to share your information if you were going to have to pinpoint some areas where you think you would get some audience attention?
Well, we want to do a public meeting. Mm-hmm. We also want to present to City Council, mm-hmm. and different organizations present what we have to offer.
Okay. And do you have data that you've collected so far that you can share, or is it still very new?
Well, we just had a launch. So in numbers, we had a launch in August, And we had about 40 people at the launch, including presenters and everybody. And then there's about between 25 and 30 people who signed up for it's a free membership. So they signed up for it.
Okay.
We're trying to get more, but we do have a Facebook page, a web page, and an Instagram account. And we have an email. Yeah.
Wonderful. All really good places for you to start sharing those visualizations. So first and foremost, what is like the key points that you want to share? You're gonna, if you open up that handout that was sent to you yesterday, or if you don't have it now, it's gonna kind of walk you through the steps of starting your story, right? So it's gonna ask you, first and foremost, sure, you've got these pages, you're ready to talk. What is it that you want them to know, right? Jot down. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we don't want to go fight for a tenant. We want to help them out with their legal issues,
right?
With the paperwork that they need to fill in for whatever reason. So we want to tell them all about, mostly the new renters too. They don't know about sublets and what is a lease and everything. So it's also to inform people about all these important legal paperwork documents that need to be filled in.
Everything you just said can be a post in itself, right?
Mm-hmm.
A simple graphic with what do we do, right? Say on your Instagram, a simple graphic, what do we do, right? And on your second one, you have a graphic says, list, first we do advocacy work for this. Second one, graphic could be, we help you, learn your rights and discover how to reach out to whatever, right? I would start very simply with like something simple like that. What is it we do? Tell your story in each slide or each Instagram post, right? You can create an infographic for your Facebook because it's a bit longer, where it literally lists that out what it is that you do, your organization does. Very easy to read, very simple. Don't use too many words, kind of like just literally bullet point it, right? Use a really good graphic. And then create literally stories around every single thing you just told me. Like one post could be, what are your rights? Number two, what is it that, what do you need to know about this? Number three, right? And post. And the thing with social media is you want to post at the very least every other day to build an audience, right? To build an audience, you say post every day, and then you have to start liking like-minded organizations or people. That's how you're going to build it, and eventually that's how you're going to be able to share more information. But everything you said, all those points you shared with me, they've got a story, and so you're going to be able to pick a graphic and share that story. And what's really great about Facebook and Instagram, you're going to want to use those graphics to get the attention of the person, but you can then write a bit of a longer story to explain what it is you're trying to say, or to guide them to where it is they need to go. Like if your website is going to be where you want people to land, you're going to want to link your website to your Facebook and your Instagram page, and always put something like, for more information, follow the link in our bio or something, right?
Oh yeah. Well, we do have an organization, the Social Development Council in Cornwall is helping us with it. And we have business cards, and our QR code is there that directs us right to the Facebook page where they can sign up as a member.
Wonderful. And those members that have signed up with you, if you create a newsletter support that you send them once in a while, kind of like Pavro does, that keeps them informed on what it is you guys are talking about, or how they can, meetings or something. But remember, what you're going to want to do with the data stories, especially if you're trying to tell a story or trying to inform, is keep it simple in the actual graphic itself. Put whatever it is in large numbers or font, and to call the attention, and then tell the story.
Okay.
I hope that helps a
Thank
bit.
you. Yes. Oh, yes. And I heard of Canva. They're the organization that helps us uses Canva on a regular basis. So
wonderful. It's so intuitive.
Yeah. So I have to get into it and find out how to play with it.
Oh yeah, it's very intuitive, very easy to use. I actually created a whole infographic with the team during the conference, like right in front of them. It's so easy to use, so it's very user friendly. For those of you who are interested, go onto their website. You can get a free account. There's lots of free templates. You don't even have to have the pro to use it, and start playing with some of that information and how you can present it in a way that is going to be impactful. Just remember that you're going to want it. Think about what it is that you want other people to know if they knew nothing about what you're trying to tell them. And that's going to be what you're going to want to really point out to them. Okay, is there anybody else from any of the other groups wants to share or wants to ask anything? I didn't even check if there was anything in the chat for questions. Let me have a look. Okay. Well, I'm certainly happy to answer any questions if you guys come up with them along the way. I shared the presentation with you, and I shared the document with you to get you guys started. The presentation you saw, it doesn't have a ton of wording, but it does have a lot of examples. So you can always go back and use that as a point of reference. If you guys are ever reading another organization's annual report or infographic, take notes or snap a picture, keep a clipping, whatever is going to help you to inspire you a bit, and start small. I mean, you saw that infographic we did for Toronto Western. That's how we started. We started small. We started with feedback from our volunteers. We knew our volunteers wanted to hear about, the work that they're doing at the organization and how they're helping. And then we turned that into an annual report because we figured, you know what, they're doing so much good work. We need to tell our organization what we're doing. And so we're glad that we got there because then we were able to get a seat at the leadership table to speak a little bit more about the programs and expanding them. So I got one new message. Oh yeah, so Dean put Joanne email into the chat. Joanne can then dissipate any messages to me and Dean. But I do thank you for attending. I hope this was a little bit useful and that you've learned something, and that you're inspired to go try some things for yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Veronica, and thanks everybody for joining us. Personally, I really enjoyed this because I work a lot in strategy as a certification director for the International Association for Strategy Professionals. And one of the big things about strategy, making it more clear for everybody to participate, is the fact that it depends heavily on storytelling. And Veronica brought up all kinds of real important issues when it comes to building stories and data and narratives. So on behalf of Pavro and Veronica, thank you everybody for joining us. Give us an email or a call if you require any further assistance. And I think Joanne will be sending a post-webinar survey and other documentation if required. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good day. Bye, Lee.